If I may, I'll speak to God first. You're ever ready, ever more ready to hear than we are to pray at times. Give to us now grace, that as we shrink before the mystery of death, we may see life and light eternal. My friends, we've gathered here today to praise and celebrate the life of Louise Hall Browning. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. May God grant us grace in this moment, that in pain we may find comfort, and in sorrow, hope.
I could see angels' faces when they hear your sweet voice sing. So go rest high on that mountain, son, you Father.
invite you to pray with me. God, we praise you for that great company of all those who have finished their course in faith, and all those who now rest from their labor. We praise you for those dear to us, names, relations, people we know, whom we name in our hearts before you now. And especially, God, we praise you today for Louise Hall Browning, whom you have graciously received into your presence. To all of these, God, please grant your peace. Let perpetual light shine upon them, and help us to believe where we have not seen, that your presence may lead us through our years and bring us at last with them home. Amen. I'd like to invite my son Brent up now to share with us a reading.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads beside me in still waters. He restores my soul. God leads me in the paths of righteousness. Yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
I invite Tammy and Lisa now to come and to share with us a poem.
Comes the dawn. After a while, you learn the subtle difference between holding a hand and chaining a soul. And you learn that love doesn't mean leaning, and company doesn't mean security.
And you begin to learn that kisses aren't contracts, and presents aren't promises, and you begin to accept your defeats with your head held up and your eyes wide open, with the grace of a woman, not the grief of a child.
And learn to build all your roads on today, because tomorrow's ground is too uncertain for plans, and futures have a way of falling down mid-flight.
After a while, you learn that even sunshine burns if you get too much. So you plant your own garden and decorate your own soul instead of waiting for someone to bring you flowers.
And you learn that you really can endure, that you really are strong, and you really do have worth, and you learn and learn. With every goodbye, you learn.
Now we have another song, the O'Neill brothers singing The Gift of Love. They were singing those notes. I did not remember that was a musical, but it was beautiful. I invite Miss Jenna Betts now to come forward and share her reflections with us.
On learning about Louise's death, I sent an email to her daughters and her son called Remembering Louise Browning, and they wanted me to share this with you. Louise is among the most important influences in my professional life. We met when she was recruited from West Virginia to be the executive director of the Tennessee Nurses Association, of which I was an active member. Louise was invested in TNA being involved in the policy-making process at the General Assembly, and so she was always on the lookout for kindred spirits who shared her vision of nurses making a difference in health policy. She was also a superb recruiter, as she pushed her members forward to achieve more, both within the state and then within TNA and ANA. Within ANA, Tennessee punched way above its weight in influence because Louise was a trusted source among her executive director peers, and she recruited able nurse leaders for TNA. To that end, she set out to put me on a trajectory to become TNA president in 1985 to 87, chair of the ANA's Constituent Assembly in 1987, and then ANA's first vice president, 88 to 92, and president, 92 to 96. Louise was my campaign manager for every contested race, and she was completely masterful at that. Louise had several superpowers: knowing who could do the work at hand, knowing how to get them to do it, and somehow staying in the background just enough not to make any enemies or leave any fingerprints. She enjoyed that her members were able to do for nursing, and while much of what we did was actually her idea, she didn't seek the limelight. She sought the outcomes. Some of these included to expand the scope of nursing practice, improve the autonomy and reimbursement of advanced practice nurses, provide options for the support of impaired nurses so they would not be lost in their careers and lost to the workforce. And she really wanted to make sure that the ANA PAC and the ANA Board of Directors finally endorse a winning U.S. presidential candidate and get something out of it for key nursing appointments in the federal government to put policy into action. Louise was insightful, encouraging, and collaborative rather than competitive. Our successes in nursing were hers, and she valued the contributions of nurses from both Tennessee's small rural communities and large cities. And believe me, when I was the Tennessee president from 87 to 88 and I had a full-time job teaching at Vanderbilt, in the evening, Louise and I went to each and every district in this state to listen, to make TNA visible, and sometimes persuade a change in thinking by gentle arm twisting and giving facts. Louise was also an enigma. She loved her family, but rarely talked about them, except she talked a lot about her very old sisters and her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren, who are the smartest, cutest, best ever. And she was especially, a couple of weeks ago, so excited that one of her really smart grandchildren is going to be a nurse when he graduates from high school. Louise did not prepare well for retirement. She really did not know how she was going to spend her time. And you know what? She didn't mind the COVID quarantine because it allowed her hermit side to come into being. And so what she liked to do was just the end thing, stay at home. As she aged, she loved to study in depth the illness and ailments of others, but she didn't focus on her own health very much, such as anything I would suggest, like exercise, sunlight, group activities. But I will say that after she moved to the lodge for assisted living, that changed, and she participated in every exercise class and group activity, and she became a whiz at bingo. And she made me sit with her, and she showed me how she played 4 bingo cards at once in order for her to up her chances to win bingo bucks. And of course, she said to exercise my brain, but she loved those bingo bucks and all the gifts she could buy with it. I just can't say how much I enjoyed my time with Louise. We went out to dinner. We debated political incidents and current events. We discussed investments, and we actually have the same financial advisor whom she adored, and he's here today. And she would try to get you to put your money with him. And she always tried to get me to keep up with nursing and nurses and ask me what this person was doing and that. So after she moved to the lodge, I became her go-to person for civic engagement. And we voted in every election early after going over the sample ballot twice. Once at the lodge, sitting on the porch, and then once more in the car so she wouldn't forget. And I can assure you of all the things that I know about Louise, she's going to be furious that she's not going to get to vote in the November 2024 elections. Louise was definitely the wind between the wings of so many nurses who have become involved in health policy and health politics. She was also that little push in the back if we failed or felt unsure that we should step out and do something. I'm not at all sure what happens now and how death changes relationships. I just hope and pray that she continues to stay close to me, to whisper in my ear and keep me on the right path. Now do this. Now don't do that. And especially her favorite, don't embarrass me. I will always hear her saying that, and I know she said it in big events with both great love and some trepidation. And I have tried to keep that in mind. I don't think it's always worked, but now I'll really try much harder. I love Louise, and I know you must too.
Thank you, Jenna. At this time, I would like to open if there are any friends or family members that have something they would like to share in memory of Louise, a story about Louise. We would invite you to come and to offer that story at this time.
Well, hello everyone. I am the other Lisa Browning. I married John Browning, the baby of the family, about almost 31 years ago, and it's been quite a ride and an honor to be a member of this family. But I just wanted to say a few words about Lou and a little bit about our relationship. So I wanted to type it up, so I'm sorry I'm reading. I wanted to be sure I got it right. But I've called it Lessons I've Learned from Lou. They're already laughing. They already know. It is hard to believe that I stand here today almost the same age that Lou was when I married her son 30 years ago. I do not think that anyone could have adequately prepared me for the relationship that I was about to embark upon as Lou's daughter-in-law. I had only known her for about a year or so during our engagement period before John and I married. It was a sweet time of meeting family and putting together the pieces of John's family. And you might say that was the year of good behavior for all three of us. Now, John had told me things about his mom, their life in West Virginia, the move to Nashville, her role as executive director for the Tennessee Nurses Association, all of which I found interesting and quite impressive. But a year's time could barely begin to cover everything I needed to know about Louise. I will always remember one of the first times Lou and I were together by ourselves. It was a month or so before our wedding. She and I had decided to have dinner together at the local Louise cafeteria, which was a big thing back then, one evening. We began walking along the cafeteria line, and the desserts were the first option. I have never been one to pass up desserts easily, so of course I grabbed a piece of pie that just looked pretty irresistible. Lou immediately caught me. She stopped and looked me sternly in the eye and said, "Now, Lisa, you have a wedding dress to get into soon. So how about you just put that pie back?" I was shocked, embarrassed, and a little ticked off. That was when I first learned how subtle Lou would be. You could say subtle like a freight train. Our personalities were complete opposites. She was cautious, calculating, contemplating, and conscientious. I, on the other hand, was a free bird, always throwing caution to the wind. I was impulsive and sometimes illogical. One would think this pairing might not work. But Lou and I did have things in common. We both grew up in small rural towns. We were college graduates, which she found pretty impressive about me. We both loved shoes and jewelry and clothes and shopping. And we both loved our sweet treats. I was new to the big city of Nashville in the early 90s, so Lou took me under her wing and decided to educate me on things that her soon-to-be daughter-in-law needed to know. One of her greatest passions was teaching and educating, and I was a willing student. She taught me about shopping. We shopped mostly at Dillard's and Kastner Knott, Chico's, and Talbot's. She introduced me to Christie Cookies, Miss Daisy King's Baked Goods, and the Puffy Muffin. I learned that Private Editions was the best place for skincare, and that Lancome and Estee Lauder were the best in cosmetics, as she would say. Tuesday morning had the best deals on housewares. And of course, her beloved Walgreens had about anything else that you needed. I learned a lot from Lou in those early years, and she was pleased to have such a good student as a daughter-in-law. Not long after John and I were married, she confided in me that she was glad that I was the one who married her son. She said, "I think he would have gotten bored with anyone else." Lou, maybe it was you who would have gotten bored with anyone else. Lou also educated me on the importance of being an advocate for my own health and the value of nurse practitioners, which most of you know she was very enthusiastic about. She believed that nurse practitioners were just as smart and educated as doctors, and often more so. She encouraged me to seek their help for my own health care, which I have done for the past 30 years. She loved to listen as I told her stories about my visits with nurse practitioners over the years, and she always smiled and nodded approvingly. Over the years, we had our share of good laughs, outings to movies and museums, family dinners, birthdays and holidays, so many stories about her life, and some that I'm pretty sure I've heard at least 25 times or more. Discussions about life and politics. Lou, I'm sorry, I'm still kind of a semi-Republican. But one of the most important lessons I learned from Lou was how to love your children. She was compassionate and caring, believing in her children's abilities and skills to become productive citizens as well as good human beings. She saw their strengths as well as their weaknesses and always encouraged them to keep walking forward. She showed tough love when needed, but was always there for her children if they needed a safe place to fall. Over the last years, my relationship with Lou had become closer than ever before. Her fiercely independent nature started to change as she saw the need for assistance with things such as grocery shopping and trips to health and dental appointments and other activities. It provided me, as well as her children, with more time with her. She came to see me as a friend as well as a daughter-in-law, and she always made a point to tell me how much she loved me. And how much she appreciated all that I did for her. Thank you, Lou, for being a mother and a friend to me. I couldn't have asked for more. And I can only imagine what you're wearing in heaven right now.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, please.
So I'm one of those nurse practitioners. And I had to get up here and just say a few words. Today is Holy Thursday. It's a day in the Christian faith when Jesus had his Last Supper with his disciples before he was crucified, died, buried, and resurrected to new life. You know, during the Last Supper, we think about when Jesus gave his first Eucharist, his first communion to us. But another thing that he did, he also washed feet. He washed the feet of his disciples. Just imagine how the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords washing the feet of his disciples. Just imagine how the disciples felt. What went through their mind? That's what Louise did for us. She humbled herself for us, giving her all for us, and she washed our feet. Louise was one of a kind. She always had a sparkle in her eye, and her mind was always thinking about how to make lives in this world a better place. Surely Louise left this world in a better place than how she found it. Thank you, Louise, for being our role model, our mentor, our encourager, our confidence builder. Thank you for all that you did in West Virginia and Tennessee and the whole nation to empower all of us, especially nurses, and expand our scope of practice so that we could serve all people from all walks of life, especially those who are poor and vulnerable.
Louise, we love you. We are indebted to your service of ensuring high-quality expanded nursing care for all. And Louise, you're not done with us yet. Because when that time comes, we will see you again in heaven. And we're going to have a big reunion, a big celebration. And then, Louise, we will all stand in line and wash your feet.
Well, I was the recipient of many, many comments from people who couldn't be here today or who could be here today but didn't want to come up here. So I thought I'd just share a few, and they will show up in the Tennessee Nurses Bulletin as comments that are sent in for memorial edition that's going to be in her honor. So from past ANA presidents, and you know it's not often that all the ANA presidents get to know the executive directors of states, but Louise was well known. And here's what several sent me. One was, Louise Browning was something else. Another said, Louise was a great thinker. Louise was a Southern lady with grit. Louise was so knowledgeable as TNA executive director, I had no idea she was not a nurse until I read the obituary. And another one said, Louise made a difference. A past TNA president said, Louise was a treasure, an absolute jewel, funny, serious, passionate, and so much more. And although I asked and asked and asked, she wouldn't tell me her age till she retired. She just said, I'm not quite old enough to be your mother. Libby Lund, who was Louise's counterpart at the Board of Nursing, almost the whole time that Louise was the executive director of TNA, shared this, and it will be in the bulletin too, and it says, for about 19 years, we spoke weekly. After her retirement, less often, but Louise never lessened her commitment to nursing. Louise and I connected recently over some history that's going to be written about the history of TNA, and Louise is the undisputed expert. We talked several times late at night, that's her favorite time, laughing at the absurdity of life, our shared history, and the future. Louise was blessed with a sharp wit and an amazing memory. She had an unfailing willingness to help and was quick with a pointed anecdote. Even when we disagreed, and as an aside, I'll say they did that frequently, Louise was never disagreeable. She was dogged in her arguments, but she listened. She was trustworthy. Louise's advocacy skills were legendary, as evidenced by the legislation passed during her tenure, such as changes to the composition of the Board of Nursing, support for the Professional Assistance Program, certification for advanced practice nurses, and expanded privileges for advanced practice nurses. You know, in addition to what she did externally, Louise ran an organization. And when I called the Tennessee Nurses Association to share with them the sad news of her death, one of the staff members who worked with her almost the whole time, who's here today, Catherine Denton, said, I can't believe this. Louise taught me so much that I still put to use daily. She will never be forgotten. So Yesterday, I had the sad duty to call a common friend of ours, a very good friend, who's in hospice care in Birmingham, to tell her about Louise's death. And this is what she said. She said, "Oh, this is so sad. Louise was my friend. We had such good times together, even though I do remember that she just hated to get her hair messed up on our boat rides at Center Hill Lake. And I was really glad to see that Nancy mentioned washing feet, because we would not be allowed to wash her hair." And then a final one from Cheryl Stegbauer in Memphis, who was chair of the Board of Nursing and also worked to head the task force at TNA about advanced practice nursing, said this: "Louise Browning touched the lives of so many, both personally and professionally. She was a teacher at a pivotal moment in healthcare for nursing and Tennesseans. Her support for practice rights for advanced practice nurses helped bring much needed health care to underserved throughout the state. Louise will always be remembered as a very dear and special person in all our lives."
I'm Frances Edwards, and I'm one of those nurses too. How in the world do you describe Louise in a few words? I remember when we received her resume and her interview, and there were many who wanted another nurse exec, and I thought about, we had several excellent ones, but I thought, well, maybe it's time to try something new. And little did I know how much her expertise would change our association and us. She loved politics and the law, and she probably should have been a lawyer. She began to keep TNA records in order and helped us understand how to run an association, which I'm not sure we really knew all of that before. And of course, her love for politics helped us get more aggressive in Tennessee legislature and the Board of Nursing. She taught all of us a lot about passing our bills and how to block others. She was a genius at understanding how to sway each legislator. She gave nursing and nurses a face in the legislature. There had been one. Actually, the first woman lobbyist in Tennessee was the lobbyist for TNA. She even got one or two elected in the nurses elected to the state legislature. But most all of us want to talk about what fun I had during all those years I was on the board and president. Louise was a night owl, as Jenna said, and so I could call her at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and we'd have bedtime conversations. We solved many issues and many things to sleep on. She always made me think of what my role would be if I decided to take her advice. Of course, she was right. Her assessment as to what we could do if we asserted ourselves. I can remember when Jenna was running for the ANA president, and Louise talked me into standing in the hot sun for 2 hours to promote her. She kept coming back and saying, just 30 minutes more. I'd never done anything like that in my wildest imagination, but I did that. Later, when Jenna got me appointed to the ANA PAC, I learned a lot and came home to the TNA PAC to begin really raising money. And she was all behind that. She was one who told me that TNA A&A dues were about like buying a pizza monthly. And that worked a lot with some nurses. In fact, some of them still tell me that. We could go to district meetings together, and I remember somebody asking how much time we spent together, and I said, well, we do everything but sleep together, because we were together so much of the time. She would take my resume and tailor it to whatever she thought I should apply for. She really had a gift of making you look really good in whatever it was she thought you ought to be doing. Louise did protect her space. When I remember we ended up going to these meetings, and she would always say, I have to have a room by myself. And I thought, well, okay. I thought that was a little bit strange, but, you know, she knew what the money was to stay at these places, so I thought, okay. Turned out she was probably getting comped those. Louise really didn't trust doctors and would stay up late at night reading on the internet lots of homeopathic ways to cure whatever she thought you had. And she would even call you up and tell you about it. When I would suggest that she go to see a physician or a nurse practitioner, she would say, yeah, probably should, but I won't. That was Louise. Here she is advising all of us and helping us write laws, lobbying, and she would not go see a healthcare professional. You know, I always thought, go figure, why'd you do that? When I think about Louise, I always think of the song of How Do You Explain Louisa from The Sound of Music. No matter what she did or what she thought about, she was always thinking about nursing and what would be best for the nurses, not only in Tennessee, but across the nation. She was such a good friend, and I always knew she had my back. How I will miss her.
Here is Mom singing Peace in the Valley on Sunday, March 10th.
So God, and the Lamb is alive, and the night is glad, bright as the sea. Almost forgot the words. There will be peace in the valley for me. Man, I'm such a good singer. Someday there will be peace in the valley for me. Going. There'll be no sadness, no sorrow, no trouble I see. I see, there will be peace in the valley for me. Oh.
Here is Mom singing.
This is for Louise. Well, I'm tired and so weary, but I must go alone till the Lord comes and calls me away. Oh yeah. Well, the morning's so bright, and the lamp is a light, and the night is as black as the sea. Oh yes, there will be peace in the valley for me someday. There will be peace in the valley for me. Oh Lord, I pray there'll be no sadness, no sorrow, no trouble I see. There will be peace in the valley for me. Well, the bear will be gentle, and the wolves will be tame, and the lion shall lay down by the lamb. Oh yes, and the beast from the wild shall be lit by a child, and I'll be changed from the creature that I am. Oh yes, there will be peace in the valley for me. Oh my Lord, there will be peace in the valley for me someday. There'll be no sadness, no sorrow, oh my Lord, no trouble I see. There will be peace in the valley for me, for me. Louise was my mother-in-law. If y'all didn't know that, I think she's been remembered fondly and with great respect in this gathering. She used to speak to me at family gatherings and get-togethers, and she would say softly, almost on any holiday, she would say, "You're my favorite son-in-law." And I was always appreciative of that distinction, honored to be told those kind words from her. And I then started realizing she was telling everybody that they were her favorite son-in-law, daughter-in-law, grandson, granddaughter. She could do that. It was a part of being Louise. She made you feel special, distinct. She made you feel honored. She could get away with making declarative statements sometimes, even in the face of great opposition. I think life taught her forthrightness. 8 sisters and brothers, all older than her. Her angle was not contrived or sneaky. She just said what was on her mind and let the chips fall where they may. And to that end, I believe, just as she sang, there will be peace in the valley someday. My early introduction to Louise was back in 1978. She was at her house in Nitro, West Virginia. John, her son, and Tammy's younger brother, and he was 10 years old. And Lisa Kay was 15. We ate a meal and shared stories, and I played with John. We were roughhousing in the floor in the living room. And Lisa Kay, she taught us how to disco dance. And I think that was kind of big back then. I hope it was. Louise was gracious and welcoming to me from the very beginning, from the get-go. And it was a time when I was somewhat ignorant and not so worldly in life's protocols and manners, and she accepted me and treated me just like one of the kids, a guest in her house. I never felt like an outsider with Louise. She gave me the freedom to do and to say, just like I suspect she did with many of you. But she didn't hesitate to respond with a counter speech to make you think about what you just said or did. She was gracious and welcoming to me, and I will forever be shaped by her modeling of hospitality that was freely given. Not unlike my worldview, my divine concept. We're accepted somehow, the grace. I've been favorably shaped, I think, in many ways by my wife Tammy, her daughter, and by Louise. The struggles within the mind, I think, of Louise were difficult to discern because she became a protector of her privacy. We've heard a little bit about that. She was diligent and effective in her work and in her retirement. Louise, I believed, worked her whole life. I don't mean she had a paying job her whole life. She worked her whole life. I mean, she worked on herself. She worked on her knowledge. She worked on legacy, on posterity. She did the genealogy of the Coleman family, me. I've been favorably shaped. The truth is that she embraced her story and she lived it with distinction. The truth is that half a page of accomplishments is nowhere near what she was able to do with the Tennessee Nurses Association. The lives that she changed and she affected. There could be some among her family and friends who were targeted at times by her frank speech and mannerisms. You're not going to wear that, are you? You're not going to name him that, are you? But I came to realize that she learned to be honest and to speak the truth to powers that be as a young child. She was the youngest of 9 children. She had 8 siblings, all older than her. There's no mystery in her ability to speak to congressional delegations and to governors and to doctors with confidence because she had a lot of practice doing that with much more mature crowds like me and Tammy, Lisa and John. See what I did there? Yeah. There are 17 grand and great-grandchildren in Louise's family. She loved them all. You could count on her working on the genealogy and including every one of our kin, and I mean everyone, and yours and mine. She loved to place us gently in the historical evolution of our branches of the tree of life. All the little ones included. That gift was deeply, deeply appreciated. Remembering and celebrating Louise's life brings joy as well as sadness to me, and I'm sure it does to many of you. She lived a great professional life and a great retirement life. And yet, I miss the space she used to occupy. I want to invite each of you to put your arms around your memories of Louise. She's right there. Put your arms around your memories of Louise and give them a squeeze. Give them a squeeze. Our grief is real, yet we already know that thus goes each one of us. To have your name spoken after you're no longer here speaks to the immortality of us all. We are story-filled creatures, you and I. As long as we tell the stories of ourselves in relationships with Louise, her story lives on and is alive in us. There may be some in this crowd, perhaps, who embrace a more conservative interpretation of the sacred texts. But I invite you to remember Louise as you would remember those sacred texts, and particularly those that speak to life and mystery and death and wonder. We gather in this time and this place to begin, not to end, but to begin our remembering. Our remembering of Louise. Mine is not to wrap up her story, and yours is not to wrap up her story today and put it to bed and say, we did it. We walk away. No. Mine is to introduce a story. Just as we've heard from all of you who loved her and the ones that have spoken, ours is to introduce the story that will stay with us, that we put our arms around and say, yes, I knew Louise. She was my mom. She was my mother-in-law. She was my grandmother, my great-grandmother. Mine is to introduce the story that will stay with us until we, like Louise, join those who have been remembered. Peace be with you, my friends, my family. Peace and assurance be with you. There will be peace in the valley someday. Amen.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the womb. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first breath. Praise for the sweetness of the red garden, sprung in completeness where his feet had. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world.
Please hear this prayer of commendation and thanksgiving. God of us all, your love never ends. When all else fails, you are still God. We pray for one another in need and for all anywhere who mourn with us this day. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, strength. To all who sorrow, your peace. Keep true in us the love with which we hold one another. And receive Louise into the arms of your mercy. And receive also us. Help us to love and serve in this world, that we may enter with joy the world to come. O God of love, we thank you for all with which you have blessed us even to this day, for the gift of joy in days of health and strength, and for the gifts of your abiding presence and promise in days of pain and grief. We praise you for home and for friends, and we're immersed in the mystery that somehow reveals our grief, our death, and our sorrow. And now I invite you to join with me in praying the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as you forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I send you forth now from this gathering, encouraging you to remember, to reflect, to embrace the story of our mother, our sister, our colleague, our leader. Love will be remembered. From the cup of cool water or the hand of help to stand, love will be remembered always. It's the everyday moments of sharing that we will remember. You are loved.